The sky has always been our canvas for myths, gods, and unreachable truths. But when the James Webb Space Telescope locked onto 3I/ATLAS, something shifted. It wasn't a faint glimmer or a dying star billions of light years away. It was here, in our solar system, whispering a rhythm too precise to be accidental. At first, scientists called it noise, a thermal echo, a glitch. But then it repeated. Then it changed. And then it answered. The pattern wasn't just light, it was language, or at least something that mimicked the idea of language, made not of syllables or sound, but of resonance. 37 hours between pulses, each one folding into the next with a complexity that hinted at intelligence, intention, and most unsettlingly, familiarity. If you're still watching, subscribe now. You crave more than answers. You seek what lies beyond. Subscribe now, and be part of the few who never stop searching. 3I/ATLAS wasn't tumbling like a rock. It wasn't trailing ice or gas. It was moving with a control that physics couldn't explain. It resisted the sun's pull just enough to hold its path. Its surface reflected light like polished carbon steel, yet spectral analysis revealed it was composed entirely of carbon dioxide, dense, structured, smooth, not rough like a comet, not random like an asteroid, but intentional. That word, intentional, became the quiet chant behind closed doors in every observatory, defense facility, and government office. Because once intention enters the equation, so does purpose, and with purpose comes design, and with design, origin. The object didn't just reflect light, it modulated it. The signal twisted subtly every cycle, almost like it was adapting, adjusting, calibrating itself to us. Early theories ranged from the rational to the radical. Maybe it was collecting data, maybe it was responding to our telescopes, or maybe, just maybe, it was speaking in a language we'd forgotten. That's when the ancient patterns started surfacing. Scholars noticed that the pulse's internal geometry matched sacred symbols, Fibonacci spirals, hexagrams, even elements of the flower of life. These weren't fringe coincidences. These were mathematical consistencies that spanned cultures and centuries. From ancient Egyptian carvings to Tibetan mandalas, from the Nazca lines to cathedral windows, this shape, this pulse had echoed throughout human history. It was as if the object wasn't introducing itself, but reminding us it had been here before. Then came the disruptions. Magnetic anomalies, GPS systems flickering for minutes, then syncing again. Commercial satellites going silent mid-broadcast, only to resume with corrected timestamps. It wasn't just orbital, it was global. Then people started dreaming. Not just any dreams, shared themes, symbols, frequencies, languages they couldn't understand but instinctively felt, colors they had never seen before, sounds that didn't belong to Earth. Mental health hotlines saw spikes in cases describing euphoric visions, feelings of being watched, guided, or awakened. At first, the medical community blamed mass psychogenic illness. But when isolated individuals across continents reported the same symbol, the same three intersecting arcs, scientists began to wonder, what if the object wasn't just speaking to our instruments, but to our minds? Government agencies clamped down hard. A global scientific blackout was quietly enforced. Public access to raw JWST data restricted. Astronomers sharing decoded signal interpretations silenced or reassigned. The story was sanitized for public consumption. An anomalous interstellar object, likely natural in origin, but inside sealed rooms, researchers were seeing something else entirely. Tests with biomimetic proteins, placed near synthetic light replicating the object's pulse, showed molecular alignment. Neural scans of those exposed to frequency simulations lit up in patterns resembling deep meditative states, gamma waves off the charts. It wasn't just interacting with us, it was syncing with us. The mirror hypothesis gained traction. That 3I/ATLAS wasn't just observing, it was reflecting, not physically, but energetically, psychologically. It was said to be a cognitive mirror, showing us ourselves through a lens far beyond biological evolution, what we were, what we feared, what we could be. And that terrified people in power, because a species that sees its reflection, clearly, truthfully, is no longer controllable. It begins to question everything. Old astronomical records were dredged up. 3I/ATLAs had appeared in sky survey data before, faint, unremarkable, but present. Every time, in periods of global transition, the late 1800s, 1945, 2001, each moment etched into human consciousness by war, discovery, or upheaval. Was it tracking us, guiding us, or ensuring we pass some invisible test? Echoes of the object, now dubbed the Ark by some in the classified science community, were found in cave paintings, in the layout of megalithic sites, even encoded in genetic base pairs. The implications were staggering. This wasn't contact, this was a return. And then, silence. The signal stopped. But Earth didn't go quiet. The object's departure, no, its transition coincided with an upswing in synchronized thought, a burst in collaborative breakthroughs, new theories of quantum memory, simultaneous, identical discoveries in multiple labs, as if a veil had lifted, as if something had been released. The object didn't vanish. It phased. Sensors tracking it reported a measurable drop in local gravity, a ripple in spacetime that didn't align with mass or velocity. Some believe it shifted dimensions, slipping out of detectable space. Others claim it never physically existed at all, that it was a projection, a test pattern, a form of interstellar Turing test designed to see if we would recognize it. So what was it? A message? A warning? A mirror? Or maybe all three? One thing is certain. Nothing has been the same since. The world feels changed, subtly yet fundamentally. Art has grown more abstract, more symbolic. Science, more integrative. The boundaries between physics and consciousness blur by the day. And as we build our telescopes bigger, reach deeper into the dark, we carry with us the memory of the first time something looked back, not with malice, not with indifference, but with ancient, patient recognition. There is a quiet war now, between those who want to weaponize what was found, and those who want to understand it, between those who fear what it revealed, and those who are changed by it. The line isn't between countries or ideologies. It runs through every heart that looked at that object, and knew, deep down, it was never about them. It was always about us. The James Webb Space Telescope continues to scan the void, its sensors more sensitive than ever. But now there's a new directive. Look not just for anomalies, but for patterns. Look not just for signals, but for echoes. Because if 3I/ATLAS was the first to awaken us, it won't be the last. The universe doesn't speak in words. It speaks in resonance, in rhythm, in patterns carved into the geometry of dreams. And now we are listening. Not just with machines, but with minds wide open. The question that kept scientists, philosophers, and even military strategists up at night wasn't what 3I/ATLAS was. It was why now. Why, after billions of years of silence, after humanity fumbled its way through thousands of years of myth, war, invention, and radio broadcasts leaking into the stars, did something finally whisper back? And why? With such precision, such poetry, such a quiet force that shook not just instruments, but human identity itself. Behind closed doors, some believed it was no accident. The signal, with its spiraling geometry and timed pulses, didn't just echo through deep space. It resonated in our myths, our DNA, our stories. From the spirals carved into the stone at New Grange, to the concentric circles of ancient Aboriginal art, the pulse mirrored patterns long embedded in the collective human psyche. Was this coincidence? Or were we seeded long ago with the ability to understand something far beyond ourselves? Governments scrambled to maintain control. National space agencies were ordered to shut down public observatories. Amateur astronomers who caught glimpses of the signal's visual spectrograms found their online posts removed, accounts suspended, videos taken down. It wasn't just censorship. It was fear, not fear of invasion, but fear of awakening. The data, what little of it was released, suggested something disturbing. Every time the object pulsed, human brain activity around the world surged. This wasn't theoretical. It was measurable. Scientists working in isolation across different disciplines suddenly made leaps in understanding. Neural mapping algorithms that had stalled for years suddenly completed. Dream researchers in Brazil and Japan documented identical symbol sequences in their subjects' REM states, symbols matching the geometric flow of the signal. Schoolchildren in Chile, Senegal, and Nepal all began drawing a three-lobe design eerily similar to the pulse pattern. None of them aware of the object or each other. This wasn't just contact, it was a resonance, a chord struck across the entire human instrument. Some researchers theorized that 3I/ATLS was not broadcasting in the conventional sense, but activating, not teaching, not warning, but triggering. The pulse, they believed, was a key, not to unlock technology, but to unlock memory. A memory older than civilization, older than language, genetic perhaps, or something deeper, something stored not in cells, but in consciousness itself. And then came the countdown. On its final visible trajectory, before it passed behind the sun, the object accelerated, not like a rock pulled by gravity, but like a ship with purpose. The JWST tracked its path, calculating its solar conjunction perfectly, but what it couldn't explain was why the object slowed just before vanishing from view. A deliberate hesitation, a pause. And then for 7 full minutes it emitted a different signal. A broad-spectrum frequency that touched every part of the EM band radio, microwave, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet, X-ray, even gamma. It was, as one physicist described it, a complete chord played across the universe, a cosmic signature, a calling card. The signal ended with a burst of noise that wasn't noise at all. Within the static, pattern-seeking AI, found an encoded prime sequence, numbers laid out in triplets, with gaps filled in by mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio, Euler's number. But the truly unsettling discovery came not from the math, but from the shape the numbers formed when plotted in three-dimensional space. It was Earth. Not a perfect replica. Not a map, but a fractal shape. A mathematical abstraction of Earth's magnetic field, its biosphere's frequency, and its natural Schumann resonance. It was as if 3I/ATLS had mapped the planet, not physically, but energetically, and then mirrored it. Was this the final message? A goodbye? A warning? Or a blueprint? We still don't know. But the effects didn't stop when the object disappeared behind the sun. In fact, they intensified. Dreams became shared experiences, not just themes but events. People across the globe reported identical scenarios, shared landscapes, conversations with the same entities. Some saw towers of light, others walked through enormous silent libraries where books wrote themselves as they turned pages. Many claimed they spoke to beings of pure geometry, shifting, shimmering shapes that communicated in emotion and memory, not words. And across nearly every report, one phrase echoed again and again. You are ready. Ready for what? That sits the question. No one can answer. In the months following, there was a quiet revolution, not in politics or science, but in awareness. People stopped looking up at the stars with fear or longing. They began to look inward, as if something had been nudged, not awakened entirely, but stirred. A curiosity deeper than science, a knowing that we were no longer students of the universe, but participants in it. Military leaders wanted answers. Could this be a threat? A test of planetary defense readiness? But nothing in the behavior of 3I/ATLS suggested hostility. It never altered course toward Earth, never emitted radiation harmful to satellites, never interfered with defense systems, even though it clearly could. No, its effect was subtler. It bypassed missiles and missiles' minds, and that was far more terrifying. Scientists split into camps. Some wanted to replicate the signal, to broadcast a response. Others urged silence, warning that if we weren't the intended recipient, our reply could be catastrophic. What if the signal was a key? What if sending it back unlocked a door we weren't meant to open yet? But the most radical theory didn't come from labs or governments. It came from a linguist in Ethiopia who compared the pulse pattern to ancient Sabaean inscriptions. She noticed the intervals in the signal mirrored a long-lost script, one used not to write words but emotions. A kind of pre-verbal emotional encoding once thought purely symbolic. But the AI confirmed her findings. The rhythm of the signal matched the syntax of that emotional language, meaning the signal wasn't just a mathematical or energetic artifact. It was feeling encoded in light. What emotion, though? The answer was unexpected. Awe. The signal's frequency graph, when converted into audio and cross-referenced with neural feedback from volunteers, consistently activated the parts of the brain associated with awe, reverence, and connection. 3I/ATLS, it seemed, was not here to scare us. It was here to humble us, to remind us of the vastness not just outside us, but within us. So where is it now? Some say it slipped into a hidden orbit behind the sun, using gravitational lensing to mask itself. Others believe it phased into a higher dimension, existing now as pure resonance, invisible to our eyes but not to our minds. A few fringe voices even claim it's here, not up there but inside, distributed across us like a software update. Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain. The world has changed. Science fiction no longer feels fictional. Myths no longer feel mythical. The lines are blurring between story and science, memory and message. We've been contacted. Or maybe we were never disconnected to begin with. The real question is, what do we do now? Do we wait for the next pulse? Do we build something of our own and send it back? Do we acknowledge that the universe may not be a cold, empty place, but a living network of minds, watching, guiding, waiting? Or do we fall back into fear, erase the data, silence the dreamers, pretend it was all a solar flare and move on? And yet, even now, as we try to make sense of what happened, of what is still happening, the world feels eerily calm, not silent. No, there's noise, there's debate, there are scientists hunched over data in dark rooms, military planners sketching out hypothetical threat trees, philosophers and theologians arguing over meaning, over destiny. But beneath it all, there's this strange, growing stillness, a collective breath, not held in panic, but in reverence, as if something has shifted in the background noise of our species. People have started to feel different, even if they can't explain it. They wake up in the middle of the night, thinking of places they've never seen. They draw symbols they've never learned. They feel watched, not in the sense of paranoia, but presence, like standing in a cathedral too large for comprehension, a kind of sacred weight pressing softly against the mind, not threatening, but impossible to ignore. It's no longer about if we were contacted. That debate is over for anyone who's really paid attention. It's now about what the contact meant and why it came in the form it did. Why a silent drifting object from deep space would speak to us not in language, not in audio or text, but in pulses and resonance, in geometry and magnetic tremors, in dreams and mirrored thoughts. And perhaps the most unsettling truth of all is this: it didn't tell us what to do. It didn't demand anything. It didn't give us answers. It simply showed us a version of ourselves reflected in the stars. Some say that 3I/ATLS is gone now, that it came, delivered its message, and slipped away, like a messenger from an ancient age who knows better than to stick around and be worshipped. Others are convinced it's still watching, that the rhythmic dream patterns and global bursts of synchronicity we're experiencing are signs that it's closer than ever, maybe not physically, but informationally, spiritually, even. It's hard to quantify that kind of presence with instruments. We can't measure consciousness, not the way we measure light or heat or velocity. But people feel it. Pilots have reported moments of inexplicable awareness during flight. Artists are painting visions they swear weren't their own. A woman in Greece composed a symphony she says arrived in a single night, start to finish, with every instrument already arranged, every note already waiting. She says she didn't write it. She remembered it. And when she plays it, some people cry. Others fall silent. Some hear whispers in the silence between the notes. It's not magic. It's not science either. It's something in between. A language we've forgotten but always known. Meanwhile, in the classified corridors of global space programs, there's movement, rapid development, Accelerated funding. Plans once considered theoretical are now being fast-tracked. There's talk of long-range probes, of beacons, of quantum entanglement communication relays. Technology that only a few years ago was little more than science fiction. Now it's necessity. Because if it could reach us, we need to be ready to reach back. But here's the strange part. There's no consensus on whether we should. Some fear that broadcasting openly into space is like shouting into a dark forest without knowing what's listening. Others argue we already made noise, radio waves, atomic detonations, even the Voyager golden record, so staying silent now is like locking your door after the intruder's already in the house. And then there's a growing camp that says we were never meant to talk back, that 3I/ATLAs wasn't asking a question, it was giving us one. A mirror doesn't speak. A mirror just reflects. What you do with that reflection is up to you. The mirror hypothesis, as it's now called, is gaining traction. It posits that 3I/ATAS was not an emissary or a scout or even a probe. It was a psychological interface, a device not unlike a tuning fork, sent not to observe us but to resonate with us, to stir something dormant. A kind of cosmic defibrillator, shocking humanity into a higher level of awareness. Not evolution in the physical sense, evolution of meaning. There's sister chilling possibility tied to that. What if the arrival of 3I/ATLAS wasn't random? What if it wasn't sent recently at all, but long, long ago, and simply arrived now because now is when we were finally ready to understand it? That suggests a kind of predestination, or at least a design, so vast, so ancient, it collapses our timeline into something pitifully narrow. If true, it would mean our civilizations, our religions, our wars, our triumphs and tragedies, all happened under the quiet gaze of something watching from the dark. And that something didn't interfere. It waited. Waited until the moment we were technologically advanced enough to detect, yet emotionally raw enough to feel the signal it sent. A moment just like this. That's the part that scares even the most hardened skeptics. Because it suggests that 3I/ATLAS wasn't random cosmic debris or a lucky catch. It was the beginning of a conversation we never knew we were having. And it might not be the only voice in that conversation. Since its last signal, telescopes have picked up more anomalies. Nothing as dramatic, nothing as deliberate, but strange nonetheless. Pulses that don't fit any known star signatures, movements that don't follow natural orbital decay, patterns in background radiation that shouldn't be there. We still started to see the sky differently now. We look not for stars, but for meaning. And here's the part. No one wants to say out loud, what if we were the experiment? What if this entire time, Earth was a controlled environment, a kind of open-air laboratory, to see what intelligent life would do when left alone? Would we destroy ourselves? Would we rise to something noble? Would we look up in fear or curiosity? 3I/ATLAS may have been the cosmic equivalent of knocking on the glass. A reminder, you're being watched, but also you're being given a choice. And what comes next might depend entirely on how we respond. That's the burden now. Not proof, not evidence, but response. How do we teach the next generation that the universe is listening? How do we prepare ourselves to be honest in that conversation? Because this isn't set to science fiction anymore. This is reality. And it sits only just beginning.